Hello, Think Twice Radio, and welcome to our show, Smalltalk with Matt and John. I'm Matt.
And I'm John. What a show we have today. Starvation, flames, fluorocarbons.
Controversy. Politics. Religion. All sorts of things.
Yeah.
So how are you, John?
Oh, I'm actually okay, and no news is good news for me, so in my personal life.
We're still kicking.
We're still kicking. We're, Well, since we could probably start by talking about...
so a couple topics. We're going to talk about the Kenyan preacher Paul Mackenzie. We're going to talk about Thomas Midgley of General Motors.
That pudgy
we'll talk about Buffalo burning and the recent burning of buildings.
Yeah.
We'll talk about my item that I sent in with the Buffalo Common Council. Also some body cam footage that I finally released publicly. We'll talk about the new leverage, so code and media, which I've talked about in the past in Naval. Ooh. And then finally, the joy of painting.
Joy of painting, yes.
With renowned artist John Ferraro. So where should we start? Let's start with Kenyan preacher Paul Mackenzie. Yeah. I am ignorant to who this fine gentleman is.
Unfortunately, in Africa, there are a lot of religious leaders who go nuts. Now, some of them have been inspired by American evangelicals, which I think this guy has been. So that's infused itself with the Kenyan spirituality.
So he's an African evangelical.
And yeah, he used to be a taxi cab driver, and he got more and more popular in a bigger and bigger church. But basically, he started, of course, preaching apocalyptic stuff, and also he also told his followers, education is bad, medicine is bad. Also to get rid of documents on themselves and to get away from their families and follow him into the forest.
Into the forest.
And this is the thing. He figured out that you can meet Jesus if you starve yourself to death. Don't do it. That's not the way to do it. Yeah, you would think, because he said that the world was going to come to the end. But this is the thing. A guy I work with today pointed out, if the world's going to come in, why not eat as much as you want?
Yeah, you just eat all you can. So I had ChatGPT just asked us to make some bullet points about Kenyan preacher Paul Mackenzie. He said he had some controversial teachings in legal troubles. Is this something? I mean,
yeah, he did. Yeah. Also, he was down on other religions too. He was down on Muslims and Catholics and other religions you find in Kenya and stuff. And I think the controversial thing is he told his followers to not eat until they die.
It's kind of like a Jim Jones, where instead of saying drink the punch and he's saying don't eat. So how did that work out for his followers?
Basically, they'd find a mass grave of say 26, then they'd find another mass grave of 50, and they'd keep finding more and more mass graves. Eventually, the number now is 400
of followers that didn't eat.
And it's sadly, a lot of them were kids and women, but also too, there's some murder going on. There's some strangulation and whacking people on the head
by Paul Mackenzie.
Probably by him and his followers. And I guess they're not quite dead, and they're like, go ahead, just whack them.
So what was he saying? And I think I'm interested that I know sometimes if you don't eat, you kind of experience hallucinations. So I'm wondering if maybe that's what he was trying to trigger. Is he's trying to trigger that
very well could have been someone, because he said as you starve to death, the last thing you see is Jesus, and I could see people believing in that and just getting more religious euphoria and just drifting off. And also psychologically, though, the way they do it too is once your kids go, you're gonna go to I could see how you get 400 once certain people.
It's like a package deal.
Yeah, it's it, and there's more people missing. That's the sad thing.
I see. So what was he besides the not eating? Did he have any? I mean, I don't see how you could get people on board with that without some sort of other further. This is going to lead to What was he?
The big thing was the end of the world. Satan was going to come, the devil, and he would rule for 1,000 years. So I think that's kind of you want to get out of there before the big devil comes, and he's not the fun heavy metal devil, the apocalypse devil.
So you're saying don't eat so that we get out of here before the devil comes.
Yeah. I don't think it was the tempting you with fruit devil either. Something you would fear, and I could see why you would get out of town then, and it's just yeah. And the sad thing too is like there's other preachers who have done mass murders and stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it always kind of that's where it goes a lot of the times.
Actually,
it gets off the rails.
Yeah, there was another one. It was called the Ten Commandment Church, and the church of the Ten Commandments or something of that nature. And this guy actively, like, they started figuring out he was a crook, and he actively killed his parishioners. He didn't tell them. He put them into the church and got them all to church, and then they boarded up the church and set it ablaze. And he killed a few hundred people. And the scary thing about that is they don't know where he is now. He took off.
Paul Mackenzie?
No, not Paul Mackenzie. This was a whole other. This is a guy in Uganda.
Evangelical. So it's kind of like the Wild West of preaching.
Unfortunately, I think now, hopefully now Kenya's going to start to crack down on the religious extremists, because I think it is shocking the country, because people are being like, this is really not right at all. You know. So
it seems like religious extremism is kind of everywhere. It's probably always been that way throughout history, but yeah it doesn't.
And I hope this does inspire an African, say, backlash against extreme religiosity and like Christian cults or any kind of cults.
I mean, was his doctrines and his teaching, was he kind of Christian, or was he like an African religion that he was kind of?
It was like Christianity. Yeah, it was. Though, yeah, I bet you there probably were unique African elements in there. You know, I would imagine.
He knew his audience and he was talking to them.
Yeah.
I just don't get why anyone would follow him. If someone says the devil's coming, don't eat, I would just kind of be like, no, I like my food, and yeah.
Well, they did interview people, and some of them were like, he started off normal, and then he just started getting more and more extreme, more hateful. They said some people left because of that, but yeah, he kept turning up the volume on the cuckoo.
Well, that's the quote, right? That absolute power corrupts absolutely. So once you start getting some followers and you have absolute power, I just wonder how that, how that corrupts you. Because clearly it does people. I mean, it's pretty rare for someone to get a lot of power, whether it's a political leader, religious leader, and then not become corrupted or let it get to their ego. Because we all ultimately have egos that we're, can be stroked and patted.
I'm glad like Oprah hasn't gone nuts yet. She could probably at some point realize that she could eat a baby and nobody would care.
Wasn't she trying to save Hawaii with The Rock?
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think her and The Rock were trying to get donations for people to save Hawaii if it burnt. And I think the general pushback was, Oprah, you're pretty wealthy. Let's put some money on the table yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Who knows? I don't know. Does she still have a daytime talk show, Oprah, or she's kind of off there?
No. I wonder. You know what? I wonder what is she actually doing?
What is Oprah?
Is she like?
She has a powerful platform. She could be using it for good. She seems like she's neutral. She's not doing anything positive or negative. Yeah, she's just still well known. People want her to run for president still.
I despise that idea because I don't like. I think I'm like celebrities. No. I like if somebody's out there and they say I'm going to grab them. It's like no Oprah.
Well, I think at this point people are kind of pushing for, they're grasping for straws because we don't seem to have any good candidates. But back to Paul Mackenzie. What's the big takeaway? How should we as Americans, why should we care about a Kenyan preacher?
Well, it's weird. Like if the news cycle was any different, we'd probably hear about this right away. But 400 people have already died. This is
so it's ongoing.
It's ongoing, and we got to tell her, Kenya, if you know anybody from Kenya, say, hey, watch out for this guy.
Yeah. If someone tells you not to eat, question them. Keep eating while you do it.
Yeah.
So let's move on. What do we want to talk about next in our topic list?
How about my favorite pudgy inventor who's bespeckled, Thomas Midgley. He's actually not my favorite.
So Thomas Midgley Jr. of General Motors. I heard that he was an inventor of leaded gasoline and CFCs. He had environmental and health impacts of his invention, and he has, a complicated legacy that needs a historical reassessment. So what do you got?
This is the thing. He's not on my enemies list because he was, in his mind, he was doing the right thing. He was the type of guy who would carry around like a chemical chart with him.
Yeah. And
one of his favorite things to say, this is what he would say to his boss. Oh, what can I do next for you, boss? And you know what? Destroy the world. That's what he would do next for you. But he was a great inventor. He got a Nichols medal, a Perkins medal, a Priestley medal, a Willard Gibbs medal, a Landgraf medal, a doctorate from the College of Worcester, and also he was like the president of the chemical thing.
So he was like a chemist, like a kind of a Breaking Bad inspired type chemistry guy.
So, and they eventually they went to it and said there was refrigeration problems. And the refrigerators, it was another thing where it would spray all over the housewives and kill them and stuff. And it was terrible. He was like, I could invent something. And actually, he did. I don't blame him. He didn't know what he was doing at the time. But he did invent Freon gas. And then Freon, which was a great thing, would help keep stuff cool. You wouldn't have to worry about like a big muscular Iceman coming to the house.
I see, lugging blocks of ice.
Yeah, distracting your wife. And then she could have more time to go do more housewifely things, you know.
Yeah, so is Freon, do they still use it in refrigerators?
No, thank God, because this is the deal with it. Okay, luckily, there was, what was his name?
Some guy.
There were two guys. Two guys, and they discovered it was a professor and a student, and he said, "Oh, why don't you study these freons?" And he if he was eating spaghetti, he was starting to study them and doing the calculations on freons. He just spit them out all over the place. He's like, "Oh my God, this is going to destroy the world." He figured out, well, this is what happens with freons. They will float around in the atmosphere, and then when they get in the ozone, they start destroying ozone. I'm not saying it the correct way, but it's like a billiard ball. It starts destroying more and more ozone, more and more ozone.
Attacks the ozone.
And they realized, oh my God, until eventually, luckily, and he was a scientist. He wrote a scientific paper, and of course, GM was like, oh, "Get out of here! You're full of beans." But eventually, there were Arctic scientists who were like, "Whoa, there's a hole in the ozone."
It was started by Freon.
It was because of Freon, and Jesus, and we did come close. And it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, thank God, back then, there's less kooks on the planet, and
that we knew about.
Industry
had a microphone.
Yeah, and there was no internet. The industries too, they would try to do underhand. They did. As we'll learn later, did underhanded stuff to like keep dangerous products. They did not care, but they eventually they caved in, and like the world came together. Scientists from around the world. They talked to governments and they banned Freon
globally,
everywhere. And that should be pointed out as a global catastrophe avoided.
That's nice. So the ones that are avoided don't get as much attention as the ones that occurred.
They don't. Like the other day, I was walking out in the sun and going and I was really happy about that.
Well, luckily, they got rid of the Freon.
Yeah.
So they kind of just slowed the pace of the ozone hole.
Yeah. But we almost died. Yeah, it's getting smaller now. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But we almost. Yeah, it could have been. If they never figured that out, who knows? We could have been cooked alive.
I see.
But this is the thing. It's like, what could I do next, boss? He almost destroyed the world a second time. Okay. This is another thing. There was knocking in engines. They would knock horribly when they first had the Model Ts. They were like, boom, 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 boom. Like, this is the old-fashioned days. This is so messed up. Where like things would rattle and break. So they decided a way to make it quiet or make the engine run better. And he tried all these different things. And one of the things he decided to use was lead.
I think lead has some uses, and obviously it's not good for human ingestion.
This is a deal. Okay, maybe he knew about it because they knew about that at the time, since the Roman times, that lead will make you cuckoo bananas. Yeah, which it did. So there were workers who died making this stuff, and ones who just sadly just started hallucinating and then just went quote cuckoo bananas
from lead ingestion.
And then the thing is, what they did is they fixed the factory stuff, and they're like, oh, we fixed that. It's good to use. And they were told, different scientists wrote them and told them, don't do this. This is a bad idea. And even the government was going to shut them down. But that's another thing for study. But then the government was like, oh, it's okay. And GM, they put a lot of money into like, oh, it's fine. And another thing he would do is he would be proud of his product, and he would like, oh yeah, he got lead poisoning too.
Did he?
Yeah, he was getting
some karmic justice.
He would be getting the lead poisoning, but then he would be telling the reporters, like while he had lead poisoning, then he would like wash his hand with the gas, and he would get worse. He eventually got polio. This is another crazy thing. You know how he died? He invented something else. He had polio, and he had a bunch of ropes like to control his arms and
He
stuff.
invented something to get his body moving.
Yes, but he strangled himself with it, which is kind of...
So that's how he passed, was through the
That's how he passed.
Suffocated.
But it took decades. It was decades after his death that they started realizing, hey, this unleaded gas is uncool. Like, maybe you've noticed of the older generation, we're not as
environmentally conscious.
Glavening, and we're smartness challenged.
Huh. Yeah, I guess, yeah.
They estimate that half of all Americans' IQ went down
Because of leaded gasoline.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, there's big things with leaded paint and lead pipes and water. And yeah, I think they've seen graphs where I think it was lead in the water, like in the Flint or whatever. They actually show that the violence like spikes 18 years later once those babies that ingested it were
They
children.
did do that proof too. We were more, if you look at like old movies, if you ever watched the movie The Warriors, that's what my youth was like.
Yeah.
Warriors. And there was a lot of from the 60s to like the 90s, it was the world was more violent.
Yeah, there's lots of pollution seemed to be this thing that was around. And I know one of my neighbors one time, they said, I would never plant vegetables in the ground because all the chemicals in the ground. And I was like, well, I know we're all ingesting chemicals anyway because this is the way our life is. I'll take some chemicals in my vegetables because they're vegetables.
You're gonna ingest them anyway, yeah. But yeah, so the fact that the entire world was then again poisoned again
by this guy,
and they're saying like it affected other people's health in other ways. And he said there were more serial killers back then.
Really? So this guy could be, the ripple effects of his inventions are.
Yeah. Now, he's not my enemy. He's not on my enemy.
Well, it seems like it's poor management. Like he had a bright mind and he wanted to do well, but it was the management should have been directing him towards, products where he could have been using his talents to help humanity. Yeah,
I think the thing the GM says, better living through chemistry.
Yeah.
Which is...
Well, he was a cash cow for them, right? All his inventions were probably making them a lot of money.
Yes. The money was a big factor, too. And another thing, too, they could have made another type of product, like, alcohol. They could have used ethyl alcohol, but that wouldn't make them as much money.
That's what, it seems like a lot of inventions get squashed because there's no way for the corporations that have the current status quo to make money off of it.
Yeah. But so he's not on my enemies list. Paul Mackenzie, that guy.
He is an enemy.
He's on the enemies list.
So what puts someone in your enemy is just the intention, because this guy wasn't intended.
If it's the intention, if like he wanted to do it, this is another thing. Like you probably have to research it more and be more of a psychiatrist. But there had to be a part of him that kind of knew what was going on, though, because he's a scientist.
He more seemed like he just concerned with putting medals on his neck and certifications, right?
Or maybe he started telling himself that it was okay.
That he was doing good.
Yeah. And, I guess his father was an inventor, too.
It's kind of hard to put yourself in the mindset of, what is this, like the 1940s, 1950s that picture looks like? What the mind of a General Motors engineer is at that time.
Yeah. Well, like, and also a guy who carries around, like, the chemical tables, periodic tables.
It's probably in his head. He probably knew all the chemicals and how they work. That's something I flunked high school chemistry, so it's kind of that information. I can't just recall it and like understand. But how to understand the world, how the chemicals work, and how if you manipulate them, you could make things. Seems like a pretty
that would be interesting to know. Like, we put these two polycarbons together and we can get.
That's where I wish the teaching of chemistry kind of started with the big picture. This is why we're learning chemistry. This is the end goal. Not here's a table, memorize it.
You should get into that once you're inspired to get into it.
Here. This is, you could change the world through chemistry. You can do all this type of stuff. In order to do this, you need to know this table. Okay, I'll memorize this table. But memorize this table, and then you'll understand later why we want you to.
I wouldn't push that down, kids. Yeah, just tell them about, you got to give them the.
Yeah. I wonder the kids today, how they must really not like chemistry or understand it.
Oh, yeah. Well, remember, because back when I was young, we were, because of lead, we were all like, we make noises like that.
Yeah, let's move on to another topic. Let's talk about buffalo burns. So this week we had the burning of the old pink, and I actually have a YouTube clip of it. Let's see if I can bring it up here.
Yeah.
So we had crews watched as the pink was demolished.
Like to me, I have a more sentimental feelings because I had I spent my 20s there. I went in there a confused young man, and I left an alcoholic.
But you found your vocation out of your confusion.
I think so. Yeah, it was really great. It is still, to me, in my mind, the ideal dive bar. You go in there, it's a long hallway, and it's like in the Christmas lights, the red lights.
Well, that's the thing is you literally can't rebuild it, right? It's there's too much character, too much charm.
It had its own unique thing, though it was disgusting in a lot of ways. The bathrooms were horrible.
Yeah, so I've heard, but I guess it's kind of sad because it's a piece of especially Allentown. It's just a big part of Buffalo's history. I know there's a clip of people stealing the bricks. Where the bricks are going in a dump anyway, so why can't someone put a brick from the Pink in there? You know,
I actually took.
And now it's just a vacant parcel. So now who knows what they'll put there? Hopefully, it's not some sort of corporate chain like an Applebee's.
That would be horrifying if it was an Applebee's. Yeah.
Nothing wrong with Applebee's. It just doesn't fit the character of Allentown.
Yeah. I am getting, as I'm getting older, I'm getting more angry at gentrification.
Yeah.
Where they'll go to a nice area where things are kind of inexpensive and they just.
Or artists. There seems to be an attack on the artists and the creatives in the city. I know just with the hostel example of them evicting the hostels so they can put some luxury condos there.
Yeah.
It just seems, there's a war on art and a war on weirdness and culture, and I hope that they rebuild that parcel now that's vacant into something of the same spirit as the old Pink.
Yeah, that would be that. So
what is your best Pink story? Do you have one memory from the 90s that maybe encapsulated the essence of the Pink?
I was robbed there.
Oh,
yes. Okay, I was there, a young man, a man out on the town. Enjoying my wine, and there was a young lady there, and I went there. I was drinking beer. I started talking to her, and before you knew it, we were embraced by the lips. I was making out with her at the bar. I was really happy because that never happens to me.
Yeah, it was a good moment. But was it a trick to get you robbed?
Oh, well, a young Lothario, I would never suspect such a thing.
Yeah,
not me. So I was there having a great time. Then she pushes me away and she turns to me and she goes, "Now, kiss him."
Whoa.
And I'm like, "Ew." And I'm like, "No, not I. No, sodomite me." And I rebuked her. And I was like, "What a thing." And I was like, "Oh, gee, what a weird thing." And when I was walking home, I'm looking around and I'm like, my wallet was gone.
How do you not even just drop it? Or maybe in your drunken slumber.
My suspicion is that it was pickpocketed. Pickpocketed while I was distracted.
Yeah, that's how they get you. And I think there's probably ample room for pickpocketing drunks on Allentown.
Yeah. And I think that's the only, I think that's the only thing, the way it could happen. I don't see pickpocketing ooh, somebody just picks your.
Yeah, it's all so stealthy. We also had another building burn in the Cobblestone district.
Oh, yeah.
So we had, in this building, the Cobblestone had been, the city was trying to seize it through eminent domain. And then I think, the week that the state was supposed to make its final ruling, it's been a decades-long and years-long case of the city trying to get ownership. As the week that the state was supposed to render their decision on whether the city could take it, just mysteriously burned down. So I think both these fires, the police department has come out and said that they're both suspicious, so they're investigating. But this one particularly, I don't know if there's anything official, but it seems like probably the owner, I would suspect, and I think people with common sense would think, oh, he probably had something to do with his burning building the week that it was supposed to be taken by the state or the county.
I know with the Pink, the rumor is, I heard people say that they were like crackheads.
Yeah.
Fighting outside.
At the Pink?
Of the Pink, after it had closed. And they said they saw somebody one of the crackheads throw something at the Pink or inside the window.
Burnt down. I heard it was maybe a kitchen fire. But yeah, I think, especially with the recent heat, it's in Buffalo been, 90s. So, and then we have an old housing stock that's probably not up to the modern fire code. So it just seems very disappointing too to just see a lot of Buffalo's history and architecture just burning this summer. And I think, it's just disappointing because this building, a lot could have been done with it. And I think they're still going to try to do something with it, but it's charred at this point. And the Pink, obviously, you can't rebuild the Pink. There's no way you can of the history and the quirkiness and the culture of it. So, I don't know. I hope, it's just sad to see Buffalo's architecture, burning a lot of times, whether it's through negligence or through, the construction of the buildings.
Yeah, it is. It is sad. Yeah, and they're all old, nice buildings with character and history.
I was particularly distraught of the Great Northern Silo that what they demoed last year. That was by Riverworks, because I think that was like built before they dropped the atomic bomb.
Oh,
so there was something with the steel of it. They called it pre-war steel, or like the actual chemistry of the steel is different because there wasn't nuclear or atomic atoms in the world yet, so the steel was built differently.
Interesting, yeah.
And it's just disappointing too. I think it was demoed the week after Music is Art, so like you had this music festival where this old silo was used like this art exhibit, and then people at the city and the owners are like, we have no use for this grain silo. It's like, that's, you save it because you figure out the use later. You have a cool space, unique world space, and I think Buffalo should do its best to protect its old architecture, because you can't rebuild this building that was built in the 1800s or go into the pink. So we need to keep our. I just fear, and especially after traveling across the country and just seeing how that every city's been turned into a giant transit road strip mall. So I just fear that we'll. The high-rise condos that all look the same will just be built in this spot, and eventually the whole city will just be one just giant, blah.
Oh God, like I know one thing I'm angry about. I'm still angry about the Main Place Mall.
Really? I'm sad they don't do something with it. I don't remember the heyday. There is one of the Main Place.
This is the thing. That was one of those. It's a horrible mall that they put on top. There's old Buffalo history there. My friend was telling me about, like, there used to be people used to go to the market there. They had a market. Like, and they had some older buildings there, but they slapped the Main Place Mall on top of it, like that horrible, like
1980s. Yeah, they built a shopping mall, and then they didn't utilize it because now it's just been sitting there.
Yeah, it's a mall. It's malls. Yeah, weird malls.
Well, I had a friend who he's, I guess, a young Gen Z, and we were trying to explain to him, when we were kids, we used to go to the mall and like hang out, and he just couldn't conceptualize. Wait, you went to a mall? Why would anyone go to a mall?
Yeah,
so it's just very interesting to. There used to be these cultural and economic centers, and now people just go on Amazon. Like, there's no need. So you couldn't get the cap that you just go to the mall to hang out. Like, it was it was funny. And I guess, I'm middle millennial, but it's funny, even myself, just seeing moments where I interact with people where it's like, oh, I'm getting older now.
That's weird. Yeah. Now, do you have resentment toward the older generation or younger generation?
No, I feel like I identify more with the young Gen Z. I actually started to tell people, and I'm telling people, I want more Gen Z and younger friends, because I feel like I think I was like talking with this of like, when I try to explain that I don't think Social Security will be there for me, like the boomers always go, what do you mean? It's always been there. It's you just chip in. And then when I say that exact same statement to Gen Z, they're just like, Gen Z, they're just like, Social Security's not going to be there. It's a scam. So it's just a lot of the ideas I have where like I'm caught in the world between the boomers and the Gen Z. Like a lot of these ideas that I have that I try to explain to my older friends and are controversial. When I explain them to Gen Z, they're like, of course, that's So I'd like more Gen Z's friends. And I think as my older friends die, it will probably become a necessity. And I will probably acquire more younger friends as I get older.
I don't mind young people. I like young people. I like their open-mindedness, a lot of them. And there's parts of my generation that I don't like. Like a lot of my generation was homophobic. A lot of the younger generation, like, they're not. And I like that. And my generation has annoyed me on a lot of levels. Like,
your generation your Gen X just seems to be kind of like, this goes boomer. Like, you just skipped over.
Yeah. It was like, well, the boomers always like kind of rubbed in that they had the best time. Like,
they did just. They did. And I don't hold anything personally against the boomers. They just happened to age in a very advantageous time for them. Because
the perfect time.
Were born right after we won World War II, so we had all the power. Life was good. And,
everything was cheaper, and
everything was cheaper. There was better jobs. You could buy houses, and and now they're getting Social Security, which won't be there for Gen Z and
what
folks.
What they're saying too is, there's no internet back then.
Which I think that's probably one of the best parts of being a middle millennial. Literally, my brain developed before the internet, so I feel like my brain and my development was better than if it had been wired on TikTok when I was 8 years old. I fear that what TikTok's doing to young minds. I worry. But that's another segment. So let's move on to another topic. So one thing I want to talk about is an item I filed with the Common Council. So I filed item 24-1063, which is I requested a meeting with the Civil Service Appeals Board. So I have on my YouTube channel my full audit, and I recorded a full show last week. So if you want to watch my full audit, I'll let you go there. But I will play a short clip from my video that I think illustrates maybe the topic. Let's see if I can get the sound. And the sound's not working. But essentially, I made some clips where that I shared on Twitter. But essentially, so Section 1114 of the city charter, it gives anyone aggrieved by civil service law the right to appeal to this board. And I haven't found any evidence that the civil service appeals boards exist. Like it's in the city charter and it's supposed to be, but I don't think the mayor or the council has appointed anybody. So it's like the shadow board that I don't think exists. So essentially, I think the city violated Rule 16-4 of civil service. So, and I described it last week as like in City Hall, not all employees are the same. So it's like a hierarchy or a caste system.
Yeah.
You can probably understand a caste system.
Yeah.
But at the top are exempt employees, or these are people that are like appointed by the mayor and commissioner. So they're like the top dogs at the top of the caste system.
Yeah.
Then in the middle, there's classified or like permanent positions. These are people that have like passed the civil service exam, so they've proved that they're competent for the position, and they get protections. Then at the bottom of the caste system are provisional employees. So these are people that are kind of temporary, and that's what I was a provisional. But there's actually a civil service law that says that no provisional appointment should last for more than 9 months. And my provisional appointment was kept 18 months because the civil service commissioner never conducted a civil service exam. So essentially, the city kept me in a provisional at the bottom of the caste system, I think intentionally, so that they could fire me at will. Because one of the things about getting to the middle of the caste system is once you pass a civil service exam, you have protection. So you have this thing called Section 75 termination proceedings. So if they want to fire you, there's a whole process with a hearing that you have to go to. Essentially, they kept me provisional so that they could fire me at will, which is what they did.
Yeah. So yeah, that's unfair. Yeah.
And I think they're doing this. I think it's not just me. So I think they're doing it citywide to keep people, especially to keep
string people along.
Yeah, to hold leverage over the people that work there. So if you can be fired anytime, you're more likely to do things that are nefarious or that you don't believe because you have no protection. So I think, especially as I get into a lot of the just the city in Buffalo is so mismanaged, and I think a lot of it has to do with the people running the show.
Yeah. The city.
That I live in. That's the thing is you can't really when I find corruption. I mean, one option is to bury your head in the sand and ignore it. Another option, I guess, is to fight for it. And the problem with burying your head in the sand is even though you ignored it, it's still going on. And especially as someone that lives in the city, it still affects me. So, right. So if they fired me at will, and I took me a while to get over it, but I'm kind of over it now. But the problem is that the city that I live in is affected because essentially by having provisionals, the people that are running the city haven't gone through the screening that they're competent. It's more just that they've been appointed. So it kind of affects me as a citizen because I pay taxes and they keep raising the taxes and there's so much mismanagement. I mean, it's like a Jerry Springer show in City Hall, and I think the violation of this rule, the 16.4, is kind of downstream. And I suggest if this is interesting to you to watch my full audit report on my YouTube channel. But essentially, there's even things like my union president. And I'm big union and blue collar, but my union president, she works in the HR department, which I think is a conflict of interest, and I suspect that she instigated my termination. So my own union president instigated my termination.
I've had bad experiences with unions. I've had good ones, but I do remember certain union presidents where it's like she's working for herself. She's working for herself and her small clique of friends and nobody else. And
it's the first thing my union president said to me when I met her was, "How long you been working here for?" That was like, I went to introduce myself, and that's what she said. And then also, after I filed my grievance, so one of the things, the way that she manipulates the civil services, that she works in the civil service department, so she doesn't offer civil service exams. And then as union president, she represents every single city employee in grievance. So for me, if I file a grievance against the civil service department for not giving a civil service exam, she then has to investigate herself because she's a civil service employee that didn't give the exam. After I filed my grievance, she told me to slow my march down. So she didn't say, "Oh yeah, I'm fighting for you. Let's get you a civil service exam." She literally said, "Yeah, slow your march down." But yeah, that's information on my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. And I'll be posting it on my website, muckrakerpunk.net. So let's move on to the next. The next is my BHU Bodycam footage. So I've publicly released on Christmas Eve, 3 members of the Buffalo Police Behavioral Health Unit visited my house. So I foiled for the Bodycam footage. So I released it. So let's see if we can watch a little bit. I don't know if the sound will work. Hopefully it does, and the sound is not working. But essentially, yeah, they showed up to my house and they conducted a mental health evaluation. So this is Lieutenant Steven Zip. He was questioning me, and essentially he showed up at my house on Christmas Eve and just kept asking me, why are you fired? Why were you fired? And I tried telling him I was fired effective immediately and I was given no reason in my termination letter. And he didn't like that answer. So he kept pushing me. And then eventually I just I didn't tell him off, but I kind of just started breaking stuff down to him that he didn't understand.
That's frustrating, yeah.
But I still don't really know why I was fired because I wasn't told. I was, but I think, yeah. So that footage is on online. I've made it public, but I think it was kind of in the city's threat management unit. They're this unit of the Buffalo Police Department that's like responsible for like terrorism and terroristic threats.
Oh.
So like people that say I'm going to shoot up a building or I'm going to kill this politician, like this threat management unit is that. And for some reason, the Sergeant Detective Nicole Krug of the BPD, she sent these people here. So these people really had no idea who I was. They were just said, hey, go to this person's house and do a mental health evaluation. And I don't want to get too tin hatty because I maybe have a predisposition to get that way. And I think I'm very skeptical of the city, but I think it was used. This was right after I caught the union president essentially stealing my wages and violating the CBA. And then a week later, I filed an item with the Common Council. So it's actually a protected right that you can report lost wages to an official body. I think this was part of, I think it was retaliation. I felt harassed and intimidated by the detective sergeant. So yeah, that I had posted security cam footage that didn't have audio, but this video has the full audio. So I don't want to comment too much because I'll let people watch it if they want to and see it themselves. But
yeah, I'll link to that later. Yeah,
my body cam footage is on live, so watch it and let me know what you think. And yeah, so that's that's some muckraking.
Well, it's nice that they sent us what do you call the lady there. What do you call her?
A social worker.
Social worker. Yeah, that's nice.
They cared about me, so they checked. And that's why I said they showed up to check my mental health. They've done more to damage my mental health just by showing up at my because if they can show up at my house on Christmas Eve for no reason, what else can they? That means they can show up any day, right?
Yeah,
Especially as a good Christian former altar boy, Christmas Eve is a sacred holy day for me, and to have it interrupted. Totally. I was actually at the moment. This was my parents' car, and I was detailing their car as like a Christmas gift. So I was actually I think I was actually singing too at that point when they walked up on me. But yeah, that's this is the body cam footage, and make your own judgment. But it's online now, and I think I'm glad that it's out and other people can see it. So yeah, if anything happens to me, I think that's probably related to here. And so yeah, that's my body cam footage. So that's on my YouTube. I'm Metachewy on YouTube, so you can check it out there too. Yeah. How about, do you want to jump to the joy of painting?
Oh, okay. Yes. Now this one, Richard really liked this. This was like I do all sorts of different styles of painting. I do realistic kind of picture, but even this is kind of different for me because it's realistic, but it's moody. It has kind of like a darker gothic. It's moody.
So according to your DeviantArt, this is called Forsaken, and it's Ami and Yumi from Puffy.
That's right.
And it was based on a painting you did on a tragedy in Japan.
Yeah, it's basically Japan really got whacked. They got a tsunami, and I remember it was a big tsunami. They saw it like sweeping across Japan, and that also caused a nuclear meltdown.
Oh, that is unfortunate. So this was 50 years after the atomic bombs were dropped.
Yeah, and it was like a real meltdown, and like it was bad. And I just felt I really love Japan. I'm a pro Japan guy.
Yeah.
I know the whole thing. I've been there, and it's just great. And but I really like these two singers. There's a nice photo of them where they're hugging and stuff. But I always thought that would be a good, just to emphasize the human tragedy, the pathos.
So is that a Japanese band or?
Okay. You should make fun of me for this, but yeah, they're a duo, and they're pop duo. They do a lot of different type of music, but they're like it's a pop band, but I like their music. I love their music. It's kind of like happy music, and it's like
I'm actually trying to get my buddy to start our own musical duo called The Toxically Brawn.
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, it's a pun on words. But yeah, that's related. But this piece, this is so this is just based. This is to support the tragedy. Yeah, I think one of the things about Japan that there's such a cultural force. Like everything that is culturally popular. Like I remember growing up, I was hit with the Pokemon phase in 4th grade of this
Yeah.
weird Japanese cultural thing that came to America. And it was like a
Why do I
wildfire.
like this? Yeah.
And so there's just lots of
Yeah.
stuff in Japanese, like even anime now.
Yeah.
Ganja, is it Ganja art? Is
Manga,
really
yeah.
manga is really starting to like take off. So I think Japan, maybe it's just that their island, they have they're like so isolated that they develop these cultural things that then like are so weird and so bizarre that they just become so popular all over the place because they're unlike anything else really.
Yeah. It's just that they have the weird like they speak to everybody. Like people, this is one term I heard once. They've used this for other people too. They say the Japanese are just like everybody else, but more so. Which but I've heard that used for Jewish people too.
Like they're more human. Yeah, there are pretty quirky people. If I do say so myself.
You don't want to fight them in a war. I know.
No, well, even the whole samurai culture, just like they just will honor. They put honor over everything. It's like I would not want to be fighting. Especially imagine if we fought them in a war now. Like people don't have much pride now, and you'd be fighting the samurai people that have pride.
The stories are terrifying of the way they would fight. Like the Germans, it would be like they get up and they shoot. What with the Japanese? At night, they would sneak into your foxhole with a sword and like disembowel you, and while you were alive, and like then like pull your guts out, and then they would like leave a sign like he suffered and just leave. And they would just they would really fight hard. And they wouldn't.
The kamikaze is the fact that I'm just going to fly my plane into your structure. Like, I'm going to it's like, such a, I think, I mean, Japanese culture and even the martial arts and, samurai culture is like pretty interesting. And, got nothing but respect for, people that are that, passionate, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say, avoid them in warfare.
Yeah. But have you ever thought of like doing Japanese type art, like manga art or anime? I feel like your stuff is right up that alley.
It's inspired by it. It's not dead on it, but you could probably see like on some of the more cartoony stuff. We're like, that's an anime. Like the faces are inspired by anime, which oddly enough, anime was inspired by Western cartoons because they basically they looked at Mickey Mouse and like the idea of the big eyes. They use that a lot is like that was them copying us, but then making it their own. So. Yeah, like you see the women I make, they're always usually cute, overly cute heads and, big old eyeballs. Yeah.
So I think it's a good piece of art. And I think the Japanese, I just very respect their culture. Actually, I talked about this in past shows too, but one person that I'm a fan of that's kind of Japanese culture, but also Buffalo culture is Taro Sugimoto. Oh, okay. So you know about Taro Sugimoto?
No. Who is he?
So Taro Sugimoto was he was the first Japanese ice hockey player drafted to the National Hockey League.
Oh, okay.
So in 1974, the Buffalo Sabres and their general manager Punch and Block selected Taro Sugimoto, who's the center for the Tokyo Katanas, and he was the first Japanese player ever drafted to the National Hockey League. The only catch is that he doesn't exist. So they drafted a fake player with a Japanese name, kind of to play a joke. So at this time, the NHL draft was like by phone.
And it just funny.
Took forever. So like in the last round, they're like, let's just play a prank. Let's draft a player that doesn't exist and see and just as a joke.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
One of the scouts for the Sabres, he passed this like raspberry farm in like Springville or something. Yeah. Somewhere, and it was called Sugimoto's Farm. So he said, let's call him Sugimoto. So I think they actually called the owner of Sugimoto Farm and said, what's a common boy's name? They said, Taro. So Taro Sugimoto was born. So they built like this whole, they drafted him, and then even media coverage, like the media covered him like he was a real thing. Yeah. And even at training camp, the equipment manager like sewed him up a jersey. They put up a stall, and they kept the gag going for like a couple of years before people found out. Actually, he's fake. But the Taro Sugimoto, he then Sabres fans, he's like a part of Sabres lore. Yeah. So actually at the old Aud, they used to chant like, we want Taro, like during blowouts. And sometimes you might get a Sabres game and it just says Sugimoto, like people wear Sugimoto jerseys. So it's like and actually kind of riffing on my duo, one of the songs I want to write is called We Want Taro. So I actually want to write like a folk song about Taro Sugimoto.
Yeah. Taro Sugimoto, yeah. Yeah, it's like a good Buffalo guy, comes to Buffalo from Japan. Just,
So I think that was... Well, they actually gave him stats and stuff and said, and at that point, there was no internet. So, like, the scouts, there was a Japanese hockey league, but none of the scouts that went there. So, like, it was kind of something you probably couldn't get away with now because people would just do a Google search. But back then, you could, just make up a guy. And for years, people thought he was a real figure. So, that's, kind of a weird Buffalo Japanese cultural tale.
That reminds me of John Steiny had this. He talked about when he was in college, him and a bunch of his friends made up a world leader that was coming to Buffalo, and they called him like the Thales of. Well, I'll have to look it up again. It was done in Buffalo, but he showed me articles of it, like the Thales of Monte Cristo or something. It was coming to Buffalo, and they just made it up, and they told the papers, and they also had they also had protesters go to the airport for this, and they made up a fake guy. They're coming from another country, and they said something like they would have signs like "We have nothing but malice for the Thales," and like they made up a controversy, and it got in the paper like, "Oh, this guy's coming to Buffalo," and it was a fake. It's something to Google search when you get off.
And I think there's room in the spirit of Charles Sujimoto for like making up and pranking. I just think pranking is a lost art. There's nothing good. Yeah. We don't want violent pranks. We don't pranks that hurt people, but we want pranks where even the people participating, the people leading to the prank, once they found out the prank, should laugh and chuckle.
Yeah.
Like, haha, you got me. It shouldn't have been like, oh, I was violated there, or I was harmed. It should be a good, all in good jest.
Like, even got swatted.
I was road tripping, and we drove by a school in a small town, and there was actually a crew taking down toilet paper from the trees. Yeah. And I just thought that's a good, funny senior prank. No one was harmed. There was no damage.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the tree has some paper in it, but it's not like nothing was burned down or shot up or physically destroyed. It's really just a good, funny joke. Yeah. I'm sure the principal of that school did not take it as well, but I thought there should be room in our society for impractical and practical jokes that jokes can bring people together.
Okay. Another thing, me and my buddies, my art buddies, I don't know if you remember this, we had a pointless protest.
Okay. I think I remember you holding up a sign that said something.
We made up stupid signs that, like, my one sign said, "People are jerks."
People are jerks. Yeah.
And I just stood around and, like, we were having an art show, and we so my one friend had, like, a sign that said, "Creep." It was called Creep Show. Creep Show sucks. So we were protesting our own art show.
I think there's
fun.
Flash mob protesting would be fun, like an actual positive protest. Like if you held up a sign and you were picketing, but it said something like world peace or something like yeah, save the animals.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But our point was to have like just nonsensical signs. Yeah,
nonsensical signs. Yeah. So let's move on to another topic. So
what is it?
The topic that I want to talk about, the new leverage, code in media. So this is Naval Ravikant, a video, and probably the sound's not going to work on this one either. No, it doesn't. But he talks about how we're going through a moment with the internet that it's empowering individuals through technology, right? So and I suggest people go and watch any YouTube video that has this background of the podcast. He talks about the digital, right? So let's think about even, your dad or my grandpa, his generation, the only forms of leverage they had was capital and labor, right? So he had his labor, he would go to the factory, he would work, and then he'd get capital for that. That was exchange. So really at that point, the only option you really had was for leverage, or leverage is just expanding your impact, right? So the only really leverage you had was your labor. You could work. Or if you had money, you didn't have to work, but you could pay other people to work. The problem with labor in media or labor and capital is that you need someone's permission. So if you want to use your labor, ultimately someone has to hire you to get your labor.
Yeah.
So you need permission.
Yeah.
Or capital, if you want to spend something, someone has to be on the other end of that transaction to take your money.
Yeah.
So Naval, he's saying that we're going through this moment with the internet, with technology, that there's actually these new forms of leverage. So he says code and media are the new forms of leverage. So and not only are they new, they're different types. So he calls them permissionless leverage. So if, for code or media, for code, I can just put code on the internet. As long as I have a server, I don't need anyone's permission. I can just put code on the internet. Or even now with media, this podcast is an example. No one's asking for this, right? We don't even know if our product's good, but we're here, we're recording it, we're going to put it on the internet, and we don't need anyone's permission to do that. We can just do it.
Yeah.
So he talks about how the new forms of wealth and the new careers will be impacted by these new forms of leverage. So he's talking about the new titans of industries. I think you're already starting to see it. The new titans, the new Rockefellers are people like Mr. Beast or PewDiePie, people with these huge audiences.
Yeah,
They have
yeah.
tons of leverage because they have coded media. They've created media, and it's not 2, 4, and 7. They don't need permission to get on TV. They can just use YouTube. They can just upload a video to YouTube or to the internet, and people can watch them. Versus like the old days where even for, say you were a talented musician, you'd have to go around begging music producers to put you on the radio or to make your record. Whereas now you can literally just record yourself in a microphone and put it on the internet.
But I see that people like on Instagram. There's people who they do. They have a bit they do, or they're a good-looking girl or whatever, and they can get there. They might do political stuff, or
And I think it is kind of. I think we're going through. I'd say we're going through kind of like another renaissance, like a digital renaissance, right? Like there's this. After I'm guessing after the printing press, like when people had all this new knowledge, there was like these huge renaissance where I think we're starting to have kind of a digital renaissance of we're not constrained by the old legacy systems. We don't need channel 2, 4, and 7's permission to be on their show. We can just make our own show. And that I think even the internet now, everyone has a microphone, right? So which is kind of a problem, but it's also a beautiful thing because now people that would have been discriminated against and had no shot in the old world can just put their stuff online, and if their stuff's good, you can have an audience. And even your audience might not be worldwide, but maybe even, for example, like we were talking about manja, maybe you make really great manja that only 1,000 people in the world care about. But now with the internet, those 1,000 people can find you, and you're not constrained. That's the other thing, looking through your job, like being in Buffalo, we're such a Rust Belt depressed city. In the past, I'd be constrained to opportunities here, but now with the internet, you can kind of connect with people all over the world based on your interests.
The internet is cool. And you could like, you could go anywhere. You can see what other people are doing. And,
it can be dangerous, but it can also, I think, it's a double-edged sword, right? So there's bad effects in it, but I think also good. I think ultimately the internet, I hope, and I think is going to create a more equitable world because there'll just be more opportunity and more, the world will be flatter, I guess, if that makes sense, versus, just the old ways of anything. And I think that's even, not to bring back to politics, but I kind of see the legacy political machines like still operating as if it's 1964 and they have control over the narrative and they can just do a debate on CNN with their 2 candidates and they're going to do a production. Whereas now there's so much content of like, I think politics particularly is like the fact that they're running out the same 2 candidates, but also just the whole media complex behind them of CNN, MSNBC, Fox, that like they're still operating as if it's 1984 and they have control over the narrative and they control the optics and everything. Whereas now people have YouTube, they have Twitch, they have new platforms where they can see kind of a fuller picture.
I mean, I hope we're not blindsided by that. But what happened? We're like, CNN doesn't have a thing anymore, or Fox News doesn't have a thing anymore. Though I want Fox News not to have anything anymore. But
I think that's the double-edged sword, right? Is now because there's not 3 authority figures telling us what the truth is. We have now 1,000 different versions of the truth, and now the problem is not deciphering if the narrative's true. It's actually figuring out what the narrative is, right? So I think that's ultimately what's leading to our kind of divisions now too. Is everyone based on their silo is seeing a different version of the truth, and there's no way for us. There probably wasn't something good to having a nice narrative that was it Walter Mondale? Or
it was
voice that like had a soothing voice and he read you the news.
Walter Concrete. Walter Concrete. I remember he would get on there and was like, "That's the news," and that was it.
The world probably felt like a safer place if you had this nice guy with a soothing voice that told you what the truth was, and you believed the truth. Is probably had some advantages.
But they wouldn't. They had to say both sides. They wouldn't throw in opinion. They really wouldn't. They did it. They didn't like really spin it that much. Though, like during Vietnam, they did get pissed off because they were showing they were showing soldiers and stuff, and that's where the idea of Fox came around after Nixon. That like, we'll have our own version of the news. But it was nice. Only 3 different stations, and Dan Rather, and
and they're all they're in their living room every day. So I think it's just an interesting medium. I think it's something. I think the reason I keep coming back to this podcast, and even with me kind of filing stuff at City Hall, like trying to leverage. I know my stories, whether it's my civil service board or like the police show in my house, it will never be covered by traditional media. But maybe if I put it on, create my own media, like maybe people can see it. And I think even this podcast, I keep coming back because it's like we record this for an hour and then it lives on the internet forever, which is probably maybe a bad thing, but also maybe a good thing. If we can put it's not like the old clock in, clock out world where you do an hour of labor and then that hour's done. If we sit here and make a show for an hour,
it will be there. Yeah.
Then that hour, anyone around the world can then see our show
Yeah.
in the future for indefinitely, and at any point in time at their convenience. So yeah, leveraging code, the new media.
Leveraging code.
Yeah. So that is. We have about a minute left in the show. Any other parting words of wisdom? As the answering man, you have your paraphernalia on.
That I have. Okay, this is. They used to know me as the answer man. The answer man. Dun, 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 dun. The answer man. I would give you people had questions and I had answers.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
How will Social Security be there for me?
Oh, it'll be there. Don't worry about it. Yeah, it'll be there. I mean, because you're committing political suicide if you get rid of it.
I guess, but what if abolishing Social Security becomes politically popular?
See, that's the thing. People can get talked into that BS. They really can.
But I think Social Security. Yeah. What if so Social Security people die off and there's less people collecting? Then the people at the bottom that aren't getting a penny might.
We have immigrants coming in who are paying into it. Yeah. So I'll figure out something. Yeah, I'm not a doomer. Yeah, that's weird. I'm not a doomer. I have good, hopeful thoughts.
That's good.
People are like, what about John? Did you watch the news?
You need to drag me out of the abyss sometime.
Did you hear about those Russians and the thing? And I'm like, hey, we're in America.
Well, thank you for tuning in. Think Twice.
Hey,
that was our show.
Yay.
So
thanks for tuning in.
I'm Matt, and this is John.
And I'm John.
And thank you. Until next time, we'll see you again. Fading
We'll
to
see
darkness.
you again some other time. Don't